Hello and welcome to Flower Patch. This is our weekly garden tour, and right now we're in the back, or where I have my secret cottage garden, and I'm just uncovering my Colette climber. This is a new to me rose, and when I bought it, it's just been full of buds ready to burst open and a few flowers that have already been opened. But this past weekend we got freezing temperatures. We even got a little bit of snow, and I didn't want them all to be damaged. I didn't know if my frost cover would help, and it seems to have done the trick. Tonight it's not going to get down to freezing, and the rest of the week it's supposed to be much nicer. Today we're getting a lot of clouds and it's a little chilly out here, but not too bad. But just knowing it's not going to get down to freezing means I can uncover this safely. And just look at this. I'll bring you up closer after a bit, but beautiful, beautiful. This thing will bloom nonstop all summer, I'm hoping. I was going to put it in the ground, but I had another rose in a pot here. When I removed that pot, huge gopher hole under there. So I knew this would be risking it to put it in the ground. And I didn't want to do that until I know I've gotten a handle on my gopher population. So let's take a look around and see what I've actually gotten done. Doesn't look like I've made a lot of progress, but I've been working out here. We can start here by the studio as usual for our garden tour. My little fountain's going. I will show you the new hummingbird fountain placed there in the galvanized tub when it's going, and talk about that a little bit. I have still the other one across the garden. I love all these little water features in the garden. It just, I don't know, for me the water, the sound of water and the way it attracts the birds to the garden is just so enjoyable that I love putting the features. And one thing about these, with these tubs and even my little fountain here, is I can move them as I need to. This one is electrical, so having it right here by the plug is perfect. And the ones like in the galvanized tubs are solar, and I just get those on Amazon. I have a link on the blog post of my centerpiece, hummingbird fountain centerpiece, you know, where I had it in the center with that planter with the fire ring. And I told you last week why I moved it, I think. I better look at that and see. But I had put this ivy over here on, I was kind of training it on the fence to see how that would look if I could make like a fence cover instead of providing like a wood fence there. And I kind of like it. But then after I started doing that, I noticed something that changed my mind. And let me turn you around so you can see that. Let me just do it slowly so I don't make anybody sick. Hold on, we're almost there. And this fence line, this is the underneath of my deck, and that's lattice to hide the junk that's underneath there. And if you notice, I'm trying to move this smoothly, there's roses growing along it. Now, I had put these roses back here in these pots because I didn't know where I wanted them. And the ground is so rocky right here that I couldn't put them in the ground, and they rooted down through the potholes in the bottom, and they started covering this fence. And I just started training them along the lattice. There's two different roses. They're vintage, smaller roses, very heavily scented. And they're just really, really pretty when they start blooming. And they're even pretty now because they stay this pretty green. And I thought that would work perfectly. I have another rose, but it's a white Meidland rose. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but Meidland, I think is how it's spelled. But it was given to me as a friend, and it's a ground cover rose, but it sends out these long canes that can easily be trained on a fence. And I'll show you where I want to put that one. I could put it where the ivy is, but see, I put that bamboo here since last week, and that is where I would put the rose. I'd plant it right there by the fence, and then I would train the canes up to where they covered it, like this one behind me on the lattice under the deck. And then it would be green because the Meidland rose is very green right now and full of leaves. This is a warm spot back here, so it would do the same, and it would provide the backdrop I want. and it's free. All you have to do is dig it up in front. I have a few. I have some I started from cuttings, as well as I have some in the ground that I could dig up. They're in spots I don't want them and was going to dig them up anyway. So it's perfect to put along this fence. And all it takes is a little bit of shoveling, which I think I'm going to be thrilled with that idea. Over here is the other fountain. It's not going right now. I'll go move it where it's in the sun. The water has kind of gone down, therefore that's why it's not flowing, even though the sun is out. So let me move it. Move it, move it. Okay, move out of the way, kitty. Got a bee down here fluttering around. But you'll see how it will start as soon as it gets in the sun. And the water does go down because some of it does come out, but not a lot. And that way I'm also able to refresh the water every day because I'll pull it. The clouds are going over the sun, so it's going down. But I can put more water in it. I don't normally have trouble with mosquitoes in these because I'm refilling them frequently. And if I do start to see having a problem with mosquitoes, I just put the mosquito bits in there and it takes care of them, any problem with them. I have moved, I did show you my rose, or at the beginning, yeah, I showed you my rose at the beginning over here, my colette, and that will climb up over and be beautiful along with my iceberg rose. My James Galway I moved, and I had thought I could put that right back there as well and train it on the fence. In fact, right here is my Galway, James Galway. That's a nice climber too, and it does bloom very prolifically. I didn't know if I would put it over here where the ivy was, because in the summer, well, it might work there because in the evenings it does get sun. It's just that sometimes the studio blocks some of the sun, and so they don't thrive in that particular spot. Roses don't normally. So I'll have to play it by ear and see how that goes. But I could also put this down there on the fence and have a pretty backdrop between the garden and the chicken pen. So I will give you a close-up of my Delphiniums. We'll see if they've come any further. I'll do a comparison between last week and this week, but they seem to be really thick and lush and doing great. Even though we got such a freeze this weekend, the Delphiniums came right through it. As you see, the Delphiniums right there are doing beautifully. I'll put up a little excerpt picture of what it looked like this morning. They looked a little droopy after the freeze. And then a little further down, you see the one tub that the birdies ate all my lettuce and stuff out of. I put a couple of lobelias, and I was a little worried about those, but they came through the freeze fine too. Lobelias aren't quite as hardy as many other flowers, and it was a risk. And it wasn't that I deliberately left them out, I just forgot about them. So over here is the other lettuce tub, lettuce and some cilantro. I think the cilantro is coming up in the middle. And I'm shocked that some of those radishes are actually coming up because they were super old seed, but so I see a few of the radishes coming up too. I probably need to move that bamboo because it's starting to shade that. And it's not quite hot enough. It is going to get hotter though. Maybe I should leave it. This week we're actually supposed to, today's Tuesday, Thursday we're supposed to have 80 degrees. Today it probably won't even make it past 60, but that's spring in the mountains. Cold, warm, freezing, hot. You just don't know what you're going to get. But my roses over here that I transplanted into this container, and I will leave here my grandmother's hat and my Olivia Austin rose. Olivia Rose Austin, whatever, that's her name, is named after, are doing great in that container. And I think that's where it's going to stay. I think it'll provide a really pretty pink backdrop there. The Delphiniums behind it will get much taller and therefore not be obscured by that container. And look at my poor little iris down there. It got smashed. The bear came last Friday, was it? Friday or Saturday, and he tore into my chicken pen. Our electrical fence was damaged last winter with the heavy snow, and we had 5 foot of the wet, heavy snow that I've told you about prior. it pulled all the wiring down and broke some of the wiring. So, and I didn't worry about it getting put back up because usually the bears aren't that big of an issue until later in the summer. Well, he remembered this place and came back and tore into the chicken house. I don't think he killed any of my chickens, but there was one injured. And she seems to be recovering. I'm keeping an eye on her. But we immediately had to put up the electrical fencing again. But he smashed my iris as he comes down the wall here. He comes over the wall and he was smashing the plants here. He did not get in the greenhouse yet this time. But the spot that he usually goes in is covered with metal. Let me scoot you over there. You see back there, that's the spot that he likes to come in. And I guess he didn't want to tangle with the metal. So he didn't break in there yet. So over here is the veggie garden. So here's the strawberry bed. You see the strawberries are coming up. There's some in the center that didn't make it, but out of all that I put in there, I'm thrilled with what is still coming up. And my lettuce in the far bed. Lettuce over here in the far bed is doing great. It's pickable, some of it, and I can thin it out, and then the other ones can come in, thicken up. And I've got to transplant my blueberries. I've been trying to find the acid soil. You can get that soil for acid plants. And my blueberries have been struggling, as you can see. And this lady at the garden center said they really love the acid soil, and to pot them up into another container with the acid soil, and they should recover. So that's what I'm going to do. But I haven't planted anything in these two beds. I've got some wire a friend gave me to make hoops to go over them. I can put the cloth on top. It'll help heat the soil. I want to get a temperature gauge because we've had some really warm weather, and if I could start earlier in these beds because the temperature has warmed, I will. Many crops that like the warmer soil, they like it to be almost 60 to 70 before you plant in, out in the garden. And I don't know if that's happened yet, though it could have since they're raised beds. So basically that's the update on my veggie garden. Nothing out here because we can't really plant out frost tender plants until the third weekend of May. I'm just letting the not the ground cover, what is it, the cover crop, that is crimson clover, to come up in it, and between the beds between these has crimson clover in it, and that helps just to make it more nutritious soil, etc. So there's my veggie garden. That's the extent of the progress I made there. And this is a sneak peek of the side garden. Right here I've started a little patio area in front of my studio. This is my studio. You can see the porch here and other things staged right here. And I'm starting to work on this area as well. I got some gravel put in around the stepping stones down here, filled in, and I haven't decided where that metal corner piece is going, raised bed piece. I thought I'd put it over here next to the steps, and I'm not sure it'll fit there, but I'll decide later whether or not that will fit in the corner. And you can see up along there I have the roses in the barrels. My iris is all coming up. I have some tulips that actually made it. Some red tulips over here. And there's lots of irises up there. You can see the barrels where I planted the roses and daffodils, and did a video on that. I was transplanting some climbing roses from the area behind the studio. And you can see, you could probably see it peeking out right down there somewhere, is the raised bed that I've lined that I need to fill now, because that's where I'm going to plant my dahlias this year, or a lot of them, because they'll be protected from the gophers. I don't have to worry about them eating them like they did before. And then I won't have them in all these different containers. I'm still going to plant some out in other areas. I just have to get some more raised beds that I can line the bottoms of to protect them. And one last thing, my clematis. This is my Warsaw Nike clematis, and it's coming up beautifully. I chopped it back just a couple of months ago down to probably 8-12 inches, and now it's coming up. And that helps it to bloom lower on. It wants to bloom all at the top no matter what I do, but this will help it to bloom lower. But I do have some things down at its feet that help to disguise the bare knees, so to speak, of it when it's wanting to bloom so far up. And I'll show you something here. Right here. This is a piece that has rooted. It's rooted right here, and I will dig up soon this piece. And I may leave it till the end of summer to dig it up, because that way I know it has a good root system, and then I can transplant this piece somewhere else in the garden. And I may have some more. No, that one's not rooted. I can secure this one to the ground and it would root too. So just know that you can propagate your clematis that way. It's fast. I shouldn't say fast, because it takes it probably a season to do it, but because you don't really have to do anything to it other than secure it to the ground, cover it with a little soil. I do have a post on how to layer clematis to propagate them, and I show you step by step what I do. It's just in that post that I had put them in a little pot so that I can just pull the whole pot away rather than digging it up. But this one is secured to the soil with a little soil on top after I'd scraped or cut the stem a little bit, and that has made roots in the soil. So that is always fun to do. At least it is for me. I love propagating plants. Love free plants. Thank you for joining me on this brief tour. Even though it may not seem like a lot of things have changed, I have been working out here slowly but surely, getting things in order and in place. And I'm getting a better idea of how I want to do things. I'm not one of those that can sit down and plan it out and know how something is going to work. A lot of times I have to do it while I'm in the process, and then things come to me. And that may mean I may have to move a plant that I've already planted. Kind of like I had a rose on that arbor over there. And I decided I wanted my Colette rose there because I really wanted it to work for me there. I'm getting company, so I'm going to say goodbye.